Kang Taiho stood at the observation window of the crystalline palace and looked down at the planet he had saved. 3 years ago, Velara was dying. The core of the planet was failing, and billions of Valens faced certain death. Earth had sent him here with nothing but human technology and human hope. Now the planet glowed with life again. He was 32 years old. He had spent his best years in this alien world, far from the mountains of his homeland, far from the smell of rain on Earth's soil. But he had done what he came to do. The mission was complete. His communication device made a soft sound. He looked at the message from Earth Command. The words were simple and clear. Mission successful. Transport ship arriving in 7 days. Prepare for return. Taiho read the message 3 times. He should feel happy. He should feel proud. Instead, he felt something strange and heavy in his chest. He told himself it was just the adjustment. After 3 years on an alien planet, going home would feel strange. He walked through the palace halls toward the throne room. The walls were made of living crystal that hummed with soft light. Velen guards stood at every corner, tall and elegant with their silver-blue skin and eyes that changed color with their emotions. When Taiho first arrived, they looked at him with suspicion. Now they nodded with respect as he passed. He had earned that respect. He had worked beside them in the deep mines. He had crawled through collapsing tunnels to reach the planetary core. He had burned his hands on alien machinery and breathed toxic fumes until his lungs ached. The Valens had watched a small human do things their strongest warriors could not. They had learned that humans were not weak. Humans were simply different. The throne room doors opened before him. The space inside was vast, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into soft blue light. At the far end, upon a throne carved from a single piece of white crystal, sat Queen Ishari. She was young for a queen. Her mother had died just 1 year before Taiho arrived, and Ishari had taken the crown while still learning how to carry its weight. She was beautiful in the way all Valens were beautiful, with silver-blue skin that seemed to glow from within and features too perfect to be human. But her eyes were what Taiho noticed most. They shifted color with her emotions, and right now they were pale gold, which meant she was guarded and careful. Taiho stopped at the proper distance and bowed his head. He had learned the Valen customs well. "Your Majesty," he said, "I come to inform you that my mission is complete. The planetary core is stable. Your world will live." The Queen did not move. Her eyes stayed on him, unreadable. "Earth Command has sent orders for my return," Taiho continued. "A transport ship will arrive in 7 days. I wanted to thank you personally for allowing me to serve Velara. It has been an honor." Silence filled the throne room. The Valen guards shifted slightly, their eyes moving between Taiho and their queen. Something was wrong. Taiho could feel it in the air. Finally, Queen Ishari spoke. Her voice was cold and clear like ice. "Your request for departure is denied." Taiho blinked. He was certain he had heard wrong. "I am sorry, Your Majesty. I do not understand." "Your request is denied," the Queen repeated. "You will remain on Velara." The words hit Taiho like a physical blow. He had faced many challenges in his 3 years here. He had faced death more times than he could count. But he had never faced this. He had never imagined that saving a planet would mean losing his freedom. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I am a citizen of Earth. My government has ordered my return. With respect, you cannot keep me here against my will." The Queen's eyes shifted color, turning from gold to deep violet. Taiho had learned enough about Valens to know what that meant. Violet was distress. Violet was pain she was trying to hide. "I am the Queen of the Valen Empire," she said. "I can do what I wish." Taiho felt anger rise in his chest. He pushed it down. Getting angry would not help him. "May I ask why?" he said. "Have I done something wrong? Have I offended you in some way?" The queen looked away from him. It was the first time in 3 years she had broken eye contact first. "You have not offended me," she said quietly. "You have served Velara with honor. That is why you must stay." "I do not understand." "You do not need to understand." Her voice was hard again, the moment of softness gone. "Guards, escort the human to his quarters. He is not a prisoner, but he is not to leave the palace." 2 guards stepped forward. They looked uncomfortable. They had trained with Taiho. They had shared meals with him. But they were soldiers, and their queen had given an order. Taiho did not resist. There was no point. He let the guards lead him away from the throne room, his mind racing with questions he could not answer. At the doors, he stopped and turned back one last time. The queen sat rigid on her throne, her hands gripping the armrests, her eyes still that painful shade of violet. And then, so soft he almost missed it, he heard her speak. "Taiho." Just his name. Nothing more. He had lived on Velara for 3 years. He had worked with the queen on countless projects. He had saved her planet and her people. In all that time, she had never once called him by his name. She called him the human, or the engineer, or the Earth representative. Never Taiho. Until now. The guards led him down the crystal hallways to his quarters. The rooms were comfortable, filled with everything a human could need. There was a window that looked out at the alien sky, where 3 moons hung in shades of blue and silver. Taiho sat on his bed and tried to understand what had just happened. He was not a prisoner, but he could not leave. The queen had denied his freedom, but her eyes had shown pain, not cruelty. And she had spoken his name like it was something precious, something she had been holding inside for a very long time. He thought about everything he knew about Valen culture. He thought about the books he had read, the customs he had learned, the conversations he had shared with palace servants and guards. And slowly, like light breaking through clouds, he began to wonder if the queen's refusal had nothing to do with politics or power. He wondered if it had everything to do with him. Outside his window, the 3 moons rose higher into the alien sky. Somewhere in the distance, he could see the faint light of Earth's star. Home was out there, waiting for him. But something had changed, something he did not fully understand yet. Taiho lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. In 7 days, a ship would arrive to take him home. But he was beginning to suspect that leaving Velara would not be as simple as he had thought. And he was beginning to wonder if he even wanted to leave at all. He was not locked in his room. He could walk through the palace gardens, eat in the common halls, and talk with the servants and guards who had become his friends. But every time he requested an audience with Queen Ishari, the answer was the same. Her Majesty is busy. On the 2nd day, Taiho contacted Earth Command. The response was immediate and angry. General Park demanded to know why their engineer was being held against his will. He threatened diplomatic consequences. He spoke of sanctions and broken treaties. But Taiho knew the truth that General Park would not admit. Earth was powerful, but the Valen Empire controlled trade routes across half the galaxy. A war over one engineer would cost Earth more than it could afford. General Park would make noise, but in the end, he would sacrifice Taiho to keep the peace. Taiho was alone. On the 3rd night, someone knocked on his door. He opened it to find an old Valen standing in the hallway. The visitor was small and bent with age, his silver-blue skin faded to gray, his eyes a calm shade of green. "May I come in?" the old Valen asked. "I am Morath, chief advisor to the Queen. I believe we should talk." Taiho stepped aside and let him enter. Morath moved slowly, leaning on a staff carved from black crystal. He settled into a chair by the window and looked up at the three moons. "You are confused," Morath said. "You are angry. You have every right to be." "I want to go home," Taiho said simply. "Do you?" Morath turned to look at him. His green eyes were sharp despite his age. "I have watched you for 3 years, human. I have seen the way you look at this palace, the way you smile when you walk through our gardens, the way you speak our language as if you were born to it. Are you certain that Earth is still your home?" Taiho did not answer. He was not sure he could. Morath nodded as if Taiho had said something important. "Let me tell you about our queen. She was not supposed to rule. She was the second daughter, meant to live a quiet life of study and art. But her older sister died in an accident when Ishari was just a child. Then her father died in a war she was too young to understand. And finally, her mother died of a broken heart, leaving a young girl alone on a throne meant for someone else. I know her history," Taiho said. "You know the facts. You do not know the truth." Morath leaned forward. "Ishari has been alone her entire life. She has been surrounded by people who want her power, her wealth, her influence. No one has ever wanted her. Until you came." Taiho's heart began to beat faster. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that our queen has done something no Valen ruler has done in 1,000 years. She spoke your name." "I noticed that. I did not understand it." "Then let me explain." Morath's voice was soft and serious. "In Valen culture, names have power. A queen never speaks the true name of a common subject. She uses titles and ranks. But there is one exception. A queen speaks the name of one she considers her equal, one she has chosen." "Chosen for what?" Morath looked at him with something like pity. "Among our people, when a queen speaks a name aloud, she is declaring that person as her intended consort, her partner, her match." The words hung in the air like smoke. Taiho sat down slowly, his legs suddenly weak. "That is impossible," he said. "I am human. She is a queen." "Yes, which is why she has been fighting her feelings for 3 years. Which is why she kept you at a distance, never using your name, never letting herself get too close. She knew it was impossible. She knew her people would never accept a human as their queen's consort. But feelings do not care about what is possible." Taiho thought back over the past 3 years. He remembered the queen's coldness, the way she always seemed to look through him rather than at him. He had thought she disliked him. Now he understood she had been protecting herself. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then why not just let me go? If her feelings are so dangerous, would it not be easier to send me away?" Morath shook his head. "You do not understand the second part of her problem. There is a Valen lord named Kashan. He is powerful and ambitious. His family holds debts that the queen's mother left behind when she died. For years, Kashan has been pressuring Ishari to marry him. If she does, he will control the throne. He will use our armies to conquer neighboring systems. He will turn the Valen Empire into an engine of war. And what does this have to do with me? Everything. As long as you are here, the queen has an excuse to delay. She can say she is considering her options. But if you leave, she will have no more excuses. Kashan will demand an answer, and she will have to say yes." Taiho stood up and walked to the window. The 3 moons were bright against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting for him. His family, his home, everything he had ever known. But here was a woman who had never known love, a queen who would rather keep a human prisoner than marry a monster, a ruler whose only crime was that she had looked at him and seen something worth wanting. "I need to speak with her," Taiho said. "She will not see you. She is ashamed of what she has done." "Then I will wait. However long it takes." Morath rose from his chair and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the crystal frame. You are a strange creature, human. Any other man would be planning his escape. You are planning to stay. I am not planning anything yet. I just want to understand. Morath smiled, and for a moment his old eyes looked young again. That is why she chose you. In a universe full of people who want to take, you are the one who wants to listen. He left Taiho alone with the moons and the silence and 1,000 questions that had no answers. The next morning, Taiho received a message. The queen would see him in her private study, not the throne room where everything was formal and cold. Her private study, where she went to be alone. He walked through the palace halls with his heart pounding. He did not know what he would say. He did not know what he wanted. He only knew that something had changed between them, and he needed to understand what it was. The guards at the study door stepped aside without a word. Taiho entered. Queen Ishari sat by a window, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on something far away. She did not look at him when he entered. She did not move at all. Your Majesty, Taiho said. Do not call me that. Her voice was tired. Not here, not now. He waited. Finally, she turned to face him. Her eyes were that painful violet again, and now he understood what it meant. She was afraid. She was hurting, and she had been hurting alone for a very long time. You cannot leave, she said. Not because I want to trap you, but because if you do, I will have to marry Lord Kashin. And I would rather die than let him touch me. The words fell from her like stones into water. Taiho crossed the room and knelt before her, not as a subject before a queen, as a man before a woman in pain. Then tell me what to do, he said. Tell me how to help. Her eyes widened. For a moment, she looked like a lost child. You would help me? After I took your freedom? Taiho smiled softly. You did not take my freedom. You asked me to stay. No one has ever asked me to stay before. The queen looked at him, and something in her eyes began to change. The violet faded slowly, replaced by a color Taiho had never seen before. A warm, soft gold, like sunlight through clouds. Then stay, she whispered, and help me find a way out of this darkness. Taiho took her hand. It was cool and smooth, so different from human skin. But it fit perfectly in his palm. Together, he said, we will find a way together. Outside the window, the sun of Valara rose over the crystal towers. A new day was beginning, and for the first time in 3 years, neither of them felt alone. They sat together in her private study as the sun moved across the sky, and she spoke of things she had never told anyone. She spoke of her mother's death and the debts that came with it. She spoke of Lord Kashin and his cold eyes and his promises that sounded like threats. She spoke of sleepless nights and heavy crowns and the terrible loneliness of being surrounded by people who only wanted her power. Taiho listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer easy solutions. He simply listened, and the queen discovered that sometimes that was enough. My mother borrowed heavily from the noble houses during the war with the Korath Empire, she explained. She had no choice. Our treasury was empty, and our people were dying. Lord Kashin's family gave more than anyone else. When the war ended, we owed them everything. How much? Taiho asked. More than our planet can pay in 3 generations. Kashin has been patient. He knows that eventually I will have no choice but to accept his marriage proposal. It is the only way to settle the debt. And if you refuse? The queen's eyes darkened. Then he will call a council of houses. They will remove me from the throne and put someone else in my place, someone he can control. Taiho thought about this. He thought about the political systems he had studied, the economic principles he had learned. Humans had faced similar problems throughout their history. Kings and queens had been trapped by debt and power and the greed of others. Sometimes they found a way out. Sometimes they did not. "There has to be another way," he said. "I have looked for 3 years. There is none." Taiho stood up and walked to the window. The crystal towers of the palace stretched toward the sky, beautiful and ancient. This civilization had existed for thousands of years. They had built wonders that humans could only dream of. But in the end, they were trapped by the same problems that trapped everyone: money, power, and the cruelty of those who wanted both. "On Earth," Taiho said slowly, "we have a saying: when you cannot go through a wall, you go around it." The Queen looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean that maybe we have been looking at this problem the wrong way. You see only 2 options: marry Cashin or lose your throne. But what if there is a third option? What if we can find a way to remove the debt entirely?" "That is impossible. The debt is legal. It is binding. The noble houses would never forgive it." Taiho turned to face her. "Maybe they would not have to forgive it. Maybe they would have to accept that it has already been paid." Hope flickered in the Queen's eyes, then faded. "I do not understand." "Neither do I. Not yet." Taiho pulled out his communication device. "But I know someone who might." He sent a message to Earth. Not to General Park or Earth Command. He sent a message to his younger sister, Kang Yuna. She was 30 years old and one of the smartest people Taiho had ever known. She worked as a financial strategist, helping companies and governments find solutions to impossible problems. If anyone could find a way out of this trap, it was her. The response came within hours. Yuna's face appeared on the screen, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Big brother," she said, "I got your message. An alien queen, a debt crisis, and a marriage trap. This is the most interesting problem you have ever sent me. Can you help? Send me everything. Trade laws, debt records, historical precedents. I want to see every document you can find." Taiho spent the next 3 days gathering information. The Queen opened the royal archives to him, giving him access to records that no outsider had ever seen. He worked through the nights, reading by the light of the 3 moons, sending data back to Earth in endless streams. Yuna worked just as hard. She studied Valen economics like she was learning a new language. She found patterns and loopholes that Valen scholars had missed for centuries. She called Taiho at strange hours, with questions that seemed random, but always led somewhere important. During those days, Taiho and the Queen grew closer. They shared meals in her study, talking about their worlds and their lives. She told him about growing up in the palace, about the sister she lost and the parents she barely remembered. He told her about Earth, about the mountains and the oceans and the stubborn, hopeful people who lived there. "Tell me about your family," she said one night. Taiho smiled. "My father is a traditional man. He wanted me to stay on Earth, find a safe job, marry a nice Korean girl. He was angry when I joined the space program. He did not speak to me for a year. And now? Now he is proud, I think, though he would never say it out loud." The Queen tilted her head. "Your people are strange. Why hide your feelings?" "I do not know. Maybe we are afraid of being hurt. Maybe we think that keeping our feelings inside will protect us." "Does it work?" Taiho looked at her. Her eyes were that warm gold again, the color he had come to recognize as trust. "No," he said softly. "It never works." On the 4th day, Yuna sent a message with 2 words: "Found it." Taiho called her immediately. Her face was tired but triumphant. "There is an ancient law in the Valen legal code," she explained. "It is called the debt of gratitude. It says that any service to the Empire that saves Valen lives can be counted as payment of debt. The greater the service, the greater the payment." "I saved the planet," Taiho said slowly. The planetary core was failing. Billions would have died. Exactly. By Valen law, your service could be worth more than all the debts combined. The Queen could claim your work as payment. The noble houses would have to accept it. Taiho felt his heart begin to race. There must be a problem. It cannot be this simple. Yuna's smile faded. There is one problem. A big one. Tell me. For this to work, you would have to be a subject of the Valen Empire. The law only applies to Velans or those who have sworn loyalty to the crown. As an Earth citizen, your service does not count. Taiho understood immediately. I would have to renounce my citizenship. Yes, you would have to become Valen. Permanently. You could never go back to Earth. You could never be human again, at least not legally. The weight of the words pressed down on Taiho. He thought of his father, who had been so angry and then so proud. He thought of the mountains of his homeland, the smell of rain, the taste of his mother's cooking. He thought of everything he would lose. Then he thought of the Queen. He thought of her eyes, her voice, her quiet strength. He thought of what Cashin would do to her people, to the galaxy if he gained the throne. I need time to think, he said. Take all the time you need, brother. But do not take too long. From what you told me, this Cashin does not seem like a patient man. That night, Taiho did not sleep. He walked through the palace gardens, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth hung in the darkness, small and blue and impossibly far away. He had always planned to go back. He had always believed that home was a place you could return to. But maybe home was not a place. Maybe home was something you built, something you chose, something you found in the eyes of someone who needed you. The next morning, Lord Cashin made his move. A messenger arrived at the palace with an official document. Cashin was calling a council of houses. If the Queen could not pay her debts in 30 days, she would have to accept his marriage proposal or surrender her throne. The trap was closing. Taiho found the Queen in her study, the document crumpled in her hands, her eyes dark with despair. "It is over," she whispered. 30 days. There is no time." Taiho knelt before her and took her hands in his. "There is always time," he said, "and there is always a way. I will not let him take you. I promise." The Queen looked at him with eyes full of fear and hope and something deeper that neither of them had yet named. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for me?" Taiho smiled. "Because you asked me to stay, and I am starting to think that staying might be exactly where I belong." Outside the window, a storm was gathering. Dark clouds rolled across the alien sky, and the first drops of rain began to fall. But inside the study, two people held hands and prepared to fight. 30 days. The countdown had begun. Taiho worked without rest. He studied the debt of gratitude law until he knew every word by heart. He gathered evidence of his work on the planetary core, documenting every repair, every risk, every life he had saved. Yuna sent legal arguments from Earth, strategies that blended human thinking with Velen tradition. The Queen worked beside him. She reviewed documents, answered questions, and used her authority to open doors that would have stayed closed to anyone else. They made a good team. Where Taiho saw problems, she saw solutions. Where she felt despair, he offered hope. But the clock kept ticking. On the 15th day, Taiho made his decision. He found the Queen in the throne room, meeting with her advisors. When she saw his face, she dismissed everyone else. The great hall emptied, leaving only the two of them in that vast space of crystal and light. "You have made up your mind," she said. It was not a question. Taiho nodded. "I have." "Tell me." He took a breath. This was the moment. Once he spoke the words, there would be no going back. "I will invoke the debt of gratitude," he said. I will renounce my Earth citizenship and become a subject of the Valen Empire. My service will be counted as payment for your debts. Kashin will have no legal claim to force a marriage." The queen's eyes widened. "Taiho, no, you cannot give up everything for me." "I am not giving up everything. I am choosing something. There is a difference." "But Earth is your home. Your family is there. Your whole life is there." Taiho smiled gently. "My life is wherever I decide to live it, and I have decided to live it here." The queen stepped closer to him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you sacrifice so much?" He reached out and took her hand. It was cool and smooth, so different from his own. But it felt right. It had always felt right. "Because 3 years ago I came to this planet to save it. I thought my mission was about technology and engineering. But I was wrong. My real mission was to find something worth staying for. And I found it." The queen looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something she had never done before. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you." Taiho held her close and felt the universe shift around them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The announcement was made the next morning. Kang Taiho, human engineer from Earth, would renounce his citizenship and become a subject of the Valen Empire. His service to the crown would be counted as payment for the royal debts. The Council of Houses would be informed. The news spread like fire through water. Some nobles celebrated. They had seen Taiho work. They had watched him save their planet. They believed he had earned his place among them. Others were furious. A human among Velans, an outsider claiming rights that belonged to their own kind. It was unthinkable. It was an insult to their ancient bloodlines. But Lord Kashin was the most furious of all. On the 18th night, Taiho was walking back to his quarters when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw 3 figures in dark robes, their faces hidden by shadows. He knew immediately what they were: assassins. Taiho ran. He was not a fighter. He was an engineer, a scientist, a man who solved problems with his mind, not his fists. But he was also human, and humans were very good at surviving. He ducked through narrow hallways, using his knowledge of the palace to stay ahead. The assassins were fast. But Taiho knew every shortcut, every hidden passage. He had explored this palace for 3 years. It was as familiar to him as his childhood home. But 3 years of exploration could not change the fact that he was one man against 3 killers. They caught him in a courtyard near the royal gardens. He was trapped, his back against a crystal wall, nowhere left to run. The lead assassin drew a blade that hummed with dark energy. "Lord Kashin sends his regards, human." Taiho faced them. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "Tell Lord Kashin that killing me will not save him. The Queen knows everything. If I die, she will have nothing left to lose. And a queen with nothing to lose is the most dangerous creature in the galaxy." The assassin laughed. Bold words for a dead man. He raised his blade. And then the courtyard exploded with light. Queen Ishari stood in the entrance, a weapon in her hands, her eyes blazing with fury. She moved like water, like wind, like something Taiho had never seen before. She struck the first assassin down before he could react. The second turned to face her, but she was already past him, her blade cutting through his robes like paper. The third assassin ran. He did not get far. When it was over, the queen stood among the fallen bodies, breathing hard. Her silver-blue skin was marked with scratches and bruises. A deep cut on her arm dripped violet blood. Taiho stared at her. "You are hurt." "It is nothing." She looked at him and her eyes softened. "I almost lost you. I did not know you could fight like that. There are many things you do not know about me." She walked toward him and stumbled. Taiho caught her before she could fall. You need medical attention. I need to know you are safe. He held her gently, careful of her wounds. I am safe, because of you. The palace guards arrived moments later, too late to help. They stared at their queen, covered in blood and standing over the bodies of 3 assassins. None of them had ever seen her fight. None of them had known she could. The royal physician came and tended to her wounds. Taiho sat beside her, refusing to leave even when the guards suggested it. He held her hand through the pain as the physician sealed the cut on her arm. Cashin will pay for this, Taiho said quietly. Not with violence, the queen replied. That is what he wants. He wants me to strike first, to give him an excuse to turn the noble houses against me. Then how? She looked at him with tired eyes. We continue with the plan. We show them that humans do not break. That is how we win. Later that night, Taiho sat in the queen's study while she rested. He thought about what had happened. He thought about how she had rushed into danger to save him, how she had fought like a warrior to protect someone she cared about. She had risked everything for him. He understood something then, something he had been afraid to admit, even to himself. He was not staying on Velara because of duty or honor or some grand sense of purpose. He was staying because of her, because when he looked at her, he saw someone worth fighting for. And for the first time in his life, he was willing to give up everything for someone else. The door opened, and the queen walked in. She was pale and tired, but her eyes were clear. You should be resting, Taiho said. I could not sleep. She sat down across from him. I kept thinking about what almost happened. I am here. I am alive. You saved me. But next time I might not be there. Next time Kashen might succeed. Taiho leaned forward. Then we make sure there is no next time. We finish this. Not in 10 days, not in 5 days. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. I will call for an emergency session of the council. I will present my case and invoke the debt of gratitude before Kashin can try anything else. We end this now. The queen studied his face. You are certain? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. She reached out and touched his cheek. Her hand was cool and soft. You are the strangest creature I have ever met, Kang Taiho. You face death and talk about tomorrow. You give up your world and call it a choice. How do humans do it? How do you keep going when everything seems impossible? Taiho covered her hand with his own. Because that is who we are. We are stubborn. We are hopeful. We refuse to give up, even when giving up is the only sensible option. He smiled. It is both our greatest weakness and our greatest strength. The queen smiled back. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. Then teach me, she said. Teach me how to be stubborn. You already know. You just forgot. He stood up and pulled her to her feet. Now get some rest. Tomorrow, we change the future. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed his forehead, a gentle touch that said more than words ever could. Good night, Taiho. Good night, Ishari. It was the first time he had called her by her name, and from the look in her eyes, it would not be the last. The council chamber was the oldest part of the palace. Its walls were made of crystal so ancient that it had turned dark with age, and the ceiling was carved with the faces of every ruler who had ever sat on the Valen throne. Hundreds of nobles filled the curved benches, their eyes fixed on the center of the room. Taiho stood alone in that center, surrounded by beings who had ruled the stars when humanity was still learning to make fire. He was not afraid. He had faced death in collapsing mines. He had breathed toxic fumes until his lungs bled. He had been hunted by assassins in the dark. A room full of politicians was nothing compared to that. Lord Cashin sat at the front, his face calm and confident. He was tall even by Valen standards, with dark blue skin and eyes like chips of ice. He wore the robes of a high noble, decorated with symbols of his family's ancient power. "You stand before the council as a human," Cashin said, "an outsider. Yet you claim the right to invoke the debt of gratitude, a law meant only for Valens. Explain yourself." Taeho bowed his head respectfully. "I stand before the council as a servant of the crown. I have renounced my citizenship to Earth. I have sworn loyalty to Queen Ishari and the Valen Empire. Under your own laws, I am now Valen in all ways that matter." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some nobles nodded in approval. Others shook their heads in disgust. "Legal tricks," Cashin said. "You cannot become Valen simply by signing a document. You are human. You will always be human." "Yes," Taeho agreed. "I will always be human, and that is why I am standing here today." He turned to address the full council, speaking in fluent Valen. The nobles stirred with surprise. Most outsiders never learned more than basic phrases. Taeho spoke like he had been born among them. 3 years ago, your planet was dying. The core was failing. Your scientists had no solution. Your engineers had no answers. You reached out to the galaxy for help, and Earth answered. I was sent here to save Valara, and that is exactly what I did." He pulled out a data device and projected images into the air. Pictures of the planetary core, glowing with dangerous heat. Diagrams of the repairs he had made. Videos of him crawling through tunnels, burning his hands on machinery, working until he collapsed from exhaustion. "I spent 2 years in the depths of your world, doing work that killed 3 Valen engineers before me. I breathed air that poisoned my lungs. I suffered injuries that will mark me for life, and I did it because humanity believes that life is precious, no matter what form it takes." He let the images fade. "The debt of gratitude law says that service to the Empire can repay financial debt. The greater the service, the greater the payment. I saved your planet. I saved billions of lives. I asked the council, what is that worth?" Silence filled the chamber. The nobles looked at each other, uncertain. Cashin rose from his seat. "Pretty words, human, but words do not change facts. The debt is owed to my family. The Queen must pay or accept the consequences." "The Queen owes your family nothing," Taeho replied calmly, "because the debt has already been paid, by me." Before Cashin could respond, a new voice spoke from the upper benches. "I wish to address the council." Everyone turned to look. An old woman was rising slowly from her seat, supported by 2 servants. Her skin was pale gray with age, her eyes clouded but still sharp. She wore the robes of the highest nobility, decorated with more symbols than anyone else in the room. Lady Sareth, the oldest member of the council, the grandmother of 20 noble houses, a woman whose word carried more weight than any law. "Lady Sareth," Cashin said smoothly, "we are honored by your attention." "Save your flattery for those who need it," the old woman snapped. "I have watched this human for 3 years. I know what he has done better than anyone in this room." She pointed a thin finger at Taeho. "During the core crisis, a mine collapsed in the eastern region. 40 workers were trapped. My grandson was among them." The chamber went silent. Everyone knew this story, but no one had ever heard Lady Sarath speak of it publicly. "The Valen rescue team said it was too dangerous. They wanted to wait for better equipment. But this human did not wait. He went into that mine alone. He crawled through tunnels that were falling apart around him. He found my grandson and carried him out on his back." Her voice cracked with emotion. "My grandson was 16 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him. This human saved him while our own people stood and watched." She turned to face the full council. "I do not care that Kang Taeho is human. I do not care where he was born or what color his skin is. He has Valen honor. He has proven himself worthy of our respect. And I support his claim to the debt of gratitude." She sat down heavily. and the chamber erupted in noise. Nobles argued with each other. Some shouted in support of Taiho. Others demanded that the human be thrown out. Cashin's face was twisted with rage. The queen rose from her throne. She did not raise her voice, but somehow everyone heard her. Silence. The chamber obeyed. The council has heard the arguments. Now it will vote. All those in favor of accepting Kang Taiho's claim to the debt of gratitude stand. Nobles began to rise. Lady Sarath first, then others. Some hesitated, looking at Cashin, then at the queen, then finally stood. More and more, until almost half the chamber was on their feet. All those opposed, stand. Cashin stood, and his allies rose with him. They were roughly equal in number to those who supported Taiho. The queen's voice was calm. The vote is tied. As ruler of the Valen Empire, I hold the deciding vote. Cashin smiled coldly. Your Majesty must know that voting in favor of the human will be seen as a scandal, a queen who chooses an outsider over her own kind. The noble houses will not forget. I am aware of what the noble houses will think. The queen descended from her throne, walking down the steps until she stood at the same level as everyone else. But I am also aware of what is right. She turned to face Taiho. Kang Taiho came to this planet as a stranger. He worked without complaint. He saved lives without asking for reward. He faced dangers that would have broken anyone else. And when he learned of my troubles, he did not run. He stayed. He chose to give up his home, his family, his entire world, to help someone he barely knew. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, no one else existed. That is not the act of an outsider. That is the act of someone who belongs. She raised her voice. I vote in favor. Kang Taiho's service is accepted as payment for the royal debts. Let the record show that the Valen Empire owes nothing to House Cashin. The chamber exploded with reactions, cheers from some, angry shouts from others. Cashin's face went dark with fury, but the queen was not finished. I have one more announcement. The noise faded as everyone turned to listen. For 3 years I have watched this human prove himself worthy. For 3 years I have fought my feelings, telling myself that a queen could never choose an outsider. But I was wrong. She walked to where Taiho stood and extended her hand toward him. I choose Kang Taiho as my royal consort. Let the galaxy know that the Queen of Valara has found her match. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Cashin stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. This is madness. You cannot marry a human. I will not allow it. The queen turned to face him. Her eyes were cold and hard. You have no authority to allow or forbid anything, Lord Cashin. Your debts have been paid. Your leverage is gone. You are nothing but a noble with wounded pride. Cashin stared at her, then at Taiho, then back at her. This is not over, he said quietly. I invoke the right of challenge. If the human wants to claim my place, let him fight for it. A gasp ran through the chamber. The right of challenge was ancient and rarely used. It was a duel to prove worth, a test of honor that could not be refused. The queen's face went pale. Cashin, no. The challenge has been issued. Cashin smiled like a predator who had finally caught his prey. Let the human face me in combat. If he wins, he can have you. If he loses, the engagement is void, and you will have no choice but to marry me. All eyes turned to Taiho. He looked at the queen. He looked at Cashin. He thought of everything he had been through, everything he had sacrificed, everything that still hung in the balance. Then he smiled. I accept. A human had challenged a Valen lord for the right to marry a queen. It was unprecedented. It was impossible. It was the most exciting thing that had happened in a century. On Earth, the story dominated every news channel. Politicians debated what it meant for human-alien relations. Scientists discussed the implications of cross-species partnerships. Ordinary people simply watched in amazement as one of their own stood at the center of galactic history. In the Kang family home, Taiho's father sat in front of the screen and said nothing for a very long time. Yuna called her brother that night. Her face was worried but proud. "You actually did it," she said. "You challenged a Valen warrior to a duel. Are you insane?" Taiho smiled tiredly. "Probably. Can you win?" "I do not know. Kashen is one of the best fighters in the Empire. He has trained since childhood. I am an engineer who learned to throw a punch in college." "Then why did you accept?" Taiho looked out his window at the three moons. "Because running away was not an option. Because the queen needs me. Because sometimes you have to fight, even when you know you might lose." Yuna was quiet for a moment. "Father has been watching the news." "What does he say?" "Nothing. But I saw him smile when you spoke to the council. I think he finally understands why you became who you are." That meant more to Taiho than he could express. He had spent his whole life trying to make his father proud, never sure if he had succeeded. Now, at the end of everything, maybe he finally had. The duel was set for 7 days later, 7 days to prepare for the fight of his life. Taiho began training immediately. The palace guards volunteered to help, teaching him Valen combat techniques that had been developed over thousands of years. He learned to use the staff, a traditional weapon that required speed and precision rather than raw strength. He was not a natural fighter. His body was built for thinking, not combat. But he pushed himself harder than he had ever pushed before, training until his muscles screamed and his hands bled. The queen watched him train. She did not say much, but her presence gave him strength. "You do not have to do this," she said one evening. "I can find another way. I can refuse the challenge. If you refuse, you will look weak. The noble houses will lose respect for you. Kashen will use that to undermine everything you have built. I do not care about the noble houses. I care about you." Taiho stopped training and turned to face her. "And I care about you. That is why I am doing this. Not because I think I can win, but because I would rather die fighting for you than live knowing I let Kashen take you." Tears filled her eyes. "Do not speak of dying. I am not planning to die." He walked to her and took her hands. "I am planning to show your people what humans are made of. I am planning to fight with everything I have and see what happens. And whatever happens, I want you to know that these past weeks have been the best of my life." She pulled him close and held him tight. "You stupid, stubborn human. Why did you have to make me love you?" It was the first time either of them had used that word. It hung in the air between them, fragile and precious and terrifying. "I love you too," Taiho whispered. "I think I have loved you since the day we met. I was just too scared to admit it." They stood together in the training room, two people from different worlds, holding on to each other like they were the only real things in the universe. The night before the duel, Taiho could not sleep. He sat in his quarters, looking at pictures of Earth on his communication device. Mountains covered in snow, cities glowing with light. His parents standing outside their house, smiling at the camera. There was a knock at his door. The queen entered, wearing a simple robe instead of her royal garments. She looked young and vulnerable, nothing like the powerful ruler who commanded an empire. "I could not sleep either," she said. "Come sit with me." They sat together by the window, watching the moons move across the sky. "Tell me about Earth," she said. "Tell me about your home." Taiho thought for a moment. "Earth is a stubborn planet. It has tried to kill us so many times. Ice ages that froze everything solid, plagues that wiped out millions, wars that burned cities to the ground, and every time we survived, we adapted, we rebuilt. How? How do humans keep going when everything seems hopeless? I do not know. Maybe it is because we have short lives. We know that our time is limited, so we refuse to waste it on despair. We fight until the very end because the end comes too soon anyway. The Queen leaned her head against his shoulder. I wish I had your strength. You have your own strength. You have carried the weight of a crown since you were a child. You have faced enemies and traitors and impossible choices. You are the strongest person I know. I do not feel strong. I feel scared. Being scared does not mean you are weak. It means you have something to lose. He put his arm around her. And you have taught me that having something to lose is the most important thing in the world. They sat in silence for a long time, watching the stars wheel overhead. Win tomorrow, the Queen said finally. Win and come back to me. I will try. No, not try. Promise me. Taiho looked into her eyes, those beautiful eyes that had seen so much pain and still held so much hope. I promise. Dawn came too quickly. Taiho dressed in simple training clothes and walked to the arena with the Queen by his side. The streets were lined with Valens, thousands of them, watching the human who had dared to challenge their greatest warrior. The arena was ancient, built in a time when duels decided the fate of nations. Stone seats rose in circles around a sand floor, and every seat was filled. Nobles and commoners sat side by side, united by curiosity. Lord Caitian was already waiting in the center of the arena. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed in the sunlight, and he held a blade that hummed with deadly energy. He looked like a god of war, beautiful and terrible. Taiho entered the arena with nothing but a simple wooden staff. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. A human with a stick against a Valen warrior with an energy blade. It was not a fight. It was an execution. Caitian smiled coldly. You could still surrender, human. I might even let you live. Taiho planted his staff in the sand and stood straight. I did not come here to surrender. Then you came here to die. No. Taiho met his eyes without flinching. I came here to show you what humans are made of. The crowd fell silent as the two combatants faced each other across the sand. The Queen sat in the royal box. Her hands clenched so tight that her knuckles had turned white. Advisor Morath stood beside her, his old face grave. The horn sounded. The duel began. Caitian moved first, his blade cutting through the air in a blur of light. Taiho barely dodged, feeling the heat of the weapon as it passed inches from his face. He brought his staff up to block the second strike, but the force of the blow knocked him backward. The crowd roared. This was what they expected, a human outmatched, overwhelmed, defeated. But Taiho did not fall. He rolled to his feet and brought his staff up again, circling to the right, looking for an opening. Caitian pressed forward, his attacks relentless. Each strike meant to end the fight. Taiho blocked what he could and dodged what he could not. His arms ached, his legs burned, but he kept moving, kept fighting, kept refusing to go down. The crowd grew quiet. They had expected the human to fall quickly, but minute after minute passed, and still he stood. Caitian's smile faded. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Why will you not fall? He demanded. Taiho smiled through the blood running down his face. Because I am human, and humans do not know how to quit. He raised his staff and prepared for the next attack. The sun was rising higher, the sand was hot beneath his feet, and somewhere in the crowd, a queen was praying for him to survive. The duel was far from over. Taiho was bleeding from a dozen cuts. His left arm hung useless at his side, injured in a strike he had been too slow to dodge. Every breath sent pain through his ribs. But he was still standing. He was still fighting. Caitian circled him like a predator, his blade humming with deadly light. The Valen Lord was barely breathing hard. He had trained for combat his entire life. This should have been easy. But the human would not fall. "You are impressive," Keishen admitted. "For a creature with such a short life, you cling to it with remarkable determination." Taiho shifted his grip on his staff. "Humans have always been good at surviving. It is the one thing we do better than anyone else. Surviving is not winning. No, but it is the first step." Kashen attacked again, faster this time, his blade a blur of motion. Taiho blocked the first strike, ducked under the second, and caught the third on his staff. The wood cracked but held. The crowd was completely silent now. They had never seen anything like this, a human, battered and bleeding, standing against one of the greatest warriors in the Empire. It should have been impossible. It should have been a joke. But no one was laughing. In the royal box, Queen Ishari watched with tears streaming down her face. Advisor Morath stood beside her, his old hands gripping the railing. "He is going to die," the Queen whispered. "I cannot watch him die." "Watch," Morath said quietly. "Watch what your human is teaching us." Kashin drove Taiho back across the arena, each strike pushing him closer to defeat. Taiho's staff was cracking, his body was failing, but his eyes remained clear and determined. "Why do you keep fighting?" Kashin demanded. "You cannot win. You are weaker, slower, smaller. You have no chance." Taiho laughed. It was a strange sound, bright and genuine despite the pain. "You do not understand, do you? Humans never had a chance. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We were hunted by predators stronger than us, frozen by ice ages, burned by plagues. Every species that should have survived is extinct, and we are still here." He blocked another strike and staggered back. "We are still here because we never learned when to quit. We never learned that some fights are impossible. We just kept going, kept trying, kept believing that tomorrow could be better than today." Kashin's blade came down in a crushing blow. Taiho raised his staff to block, and the wood shattered into pieces. He fell to his knees, unarmed, helpless. The crowd gasped. This was the end. Kashin stood over him, his blade raised for the final strike. Victory gleamed in his eyes. "Any last words, human?" Taiho looked up at him. Despite everything, he smiled. "Just one word. Behind you." Kashin hesitated. It was a trick, obviously. A desperate lie from a beaten enemy. But something in the human's eyes made him pause. In that moment of hesitation, Taiho moved. He grabbed a broken piece of his staff and swept it across Kashin's legs. The Valen Lord stumbled, his blade swinging wild. Taiho rolled to the side, grabbed another piece of wood, and came up swinging. The blow caught Kashin across the wrist. His blade fell from his grip and skittered across the sand. Before Kashin could recover, Taiho was on his feet, the broken staff pressed against the Valan's throat. The arena fell absolutely silent. Kashin stared at him in disbelief. "How? You were beaten. You had nothing left." "I had everything left. You just could not see it." Taiho's voice was calm despite his wounds. "Velan warriors fight for glory. They fight to prove they are the strongest, but humans fight for something different. We fight to survive. We fight to protect what we love. And we fight dirtiest when we have nothing left to lose." He looked down at Kashin, this proud lord who had threatened and manipulated and tried to take everything from the woman Taiho loved. Then he stepped back. He lowered his weapon and offered his hand. Kashin stared at the hand like it was a snake. "What are you doing?" "Helping you up." "I tried to kill you. I sent assassins to murder you. I wanted to take your queen and destroy everything you care about." "I know." Taiho kept his hand extended. "And I am choosing to show you mercy anyway." The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was not how duels ended. The winner was supposed to humiliate the loser, to prove dominance, to crush any future threat. But Taiho stood with his hand extended, offering grace to his enemy. Slowly, Hesitantly, Cashin took the hand and let Tai-Ho pull him to his feet. "Why?" Cashin asked. "Why spare me after everything I have done?" Tai-Ho looked at him steadily. "Because killing you would not make me worthy of the queen. It would just prove that I am no better than you. And I want to be better. I want to build something new, something that does not require fear or force. I want to show your people that there is another way." Cashin stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in his eyes. Something that might have been shame or respect, or both. "You are either the wisest creature I have ever met," Cashin said quietly, "or the most foolish. Probably both." The crowd erupted, not with anger, not with mockery, but with something that sounded almost like joy. They cheered for the human who had stood against their champion and won. They cheered for the mercy he had shown. They cheered because they had seen something they had never seen before. They had seen humanity at its best. Queen Ishari descended from the royal box and crossed the sand to where Tai-Ho stood. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." "I promised." She threw her arms around him, holding him tight despite the blood and sand and pain. The crowd cheered louder. Lord Cashin watched them for a moment, then slowly he bowed his head. "I withdraw my challenge," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "And I withdraw my debts. The Queen owes my family nothing. Let this matter be settled." The cheering became thunder. The wedding took place 1 month later, after Tai-Ho's wounds had healed and the political details had been arranged. It was the largest ceremony in Valen history, broadcast across the galaxy for billions of beings to witness. Tai-Ho's family attended through holographic link. His mother cried tears of joy. His sister Yuna made jokes about how he went to fix a planet and came back a king, and his father, that traditional, stubborn, proud man, looked at his son with something like wonder. "I was wrong about you," the old man said. "I thought your dreams were foolish. I thought you were wasting your life. But you were building something I could never imagine." "I learned from you," Tai-Ho said. "You taught me to be stubborn. You taught me to never give up. Everything I am comes from you." His father smiled, and 40 years of distance melted away. The ceremony blended Valen tradition with human customs. Tai-Ho wore robes of white crystal, while the queen wore a crown of living flowers from earth. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising to honor each other for as long as they lived. When the priest declared them bound, Tai-Ho kissed his queen, and the galaxy watched in wonder. That night, they stood on the palace balcony, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth hung in the darkness, small and blue and impossibly far away. "Do you regret it?" Ishari asked. "Giving up your home?" Tai-Ho looked at Earth's star, that tiny point of light that held everything he had known. He thought of the mountains and the rain and the smell of his mother's cooking. Then he looked at the woman beside him, his wife, his queen, his reason for staying. "I did not leave Earth," he said softly. "I just made my home a little bigger." She leaned against him, and they watched the stars wheel overhead. Across the galaxy, the story spread. A human who had healed a dying world, a man who had won a queen's heart, an engineer who had taught an empire that true strength was not about power or violence or domination. True strength was about choosing love over fear, every single time. In the years that followed, the Valen Empire changed. They became builders instead of conquerors, partners instead of masters. They joined hands with humanity and a dozen other species, creating an alliance that brought peace to systems that had known only war. And at the heart of it all stood two people, one human and one villain, who had proven that the greatest power in the universe was not found in weapons or armies or ancient laws. It was found in the simple act of refusing to give up. It was found in the courage to stay when leaving would have been easier. It was found in the choice to love someone, even when the whole galaxy said it was impossible. That was the heart of humanity, and now it beat in the heart of the stars.